The DC animated movies. I've talked about them once before on this channel, and if you're new here, I recommend you go take a quick squiz at that after. More or less, I explain how the guy making those lackluster Marvel animated movies has weaseled his way into making the DC animated movies since Flashpoint. One, it sort of explains why all the DC movies since then have been lackluster. The animation cheap, the story an afterthought, the voice acting bland. And two, it explains why my list mainly contains some, if not most, of the OG DC animated movies. Yes, Sam Liu is still holding the boat strong with the new Superman movies, but the DC animated movies aren't what they used to be. That being said, as requested, here I am detailing to you my favourite out of the now 33 DC animated features. Okay, now let's take a deep dive into the animated world of capes and crooks. Now I want to preface this by saying older DC movies like Sub-Zero, Return of the Joker, Mask of the Phantasm, and the DC animated shorts won't be on this list due to it not officially being a part of the DC animated series of home release movies. Plus, I'd like to talk about them in the future. So that being said, these are the top 10 DC animated movies as organised by me, Mitch. Kicking off the list is a movie that exudes conflict. When we think great movies, we think conflict. We think, what is it our hero has to overcome to prevail? Whether it be Superman trying to survive a bout with Doomsday, or Wonder Woman clashing with the God of War Ares. What is it about conflict that draws us in, that makes us enamored with the story and the character's survival? Well, let me take you to number 10 on our list, The Dark Knight Returns.
I want you to remember the one man who beat you.
The Dark Knight Returns is the ultimate story of self-preservation, conflict that is both internal and external, a story that sees a worn-out Cape Crusader preserve not only himself, but the symbol, the ideal that he represents. It's the type of story where Batman puts his foot down, his ideology, his belief, breeds conflict with the mutants, with the society Gotham has become, with the government, and with the government's personal shill in that of Superman.
Either shut it down, or one of these days someone with authority is going to tell me to come stop you. And when that happens,
may the best man win.
The Dark Knight Returns is a commentary. What on? Well, it all. Everything superheroes are, the nature of fighting the good fight, the morality of what they do, of being judge and executioner. It questions the importance of Batman. And the answer to all those questions is the result of this two-parter film.
You say you answer to some sort of authority. They only want me dead because I'm an embarrassment. Because I do what they can't. What kind of authority is that?
The feature is a hard-hitting battle royale where the fight scenes have the backbone of an ideological question and the winner decides who's right.
I want you to remember the one man who beat you.
As much as it isn't about the fight, it's more about the beliefs the opposing sides have, the conflict.
All the people I've murdered by letting you live.
I never kept count.
I did.
I know.
Of course, conflict isn't the only aspect to these DC movies. The binding element in any superhero feature is the spirit of heroism. Some convey this well, and will be seen later on the list. But for me, this is best portrayed in none other than Justice League: The New Frontier.
I'm asking each of you to be pioneers towards that new frontier. My call is to the young in heart, regardless of age. Can we carry through in an age where we will witness not only new breakthroughs in weapons of destruction, but also a race for mastery of the sky and the rain, the ocean and the tides, the far side of space, and the inside of men's minds?
Based off the comic of the same name, The New Frontier sees the forming of the Silver Age Justice League. From the art design to the voice acting, the film exudes the stoicism and skepticism of the late 50s. It's a story about being the hero you need to be, the hero the world needs you to be. It's got that sharp cynicism of the era, almost Watchmen-like discussions of the American way, perspective that needs interpretation.
I gave them freedom and a chance for justice. You know, the American way.
That's what a lot of the others said at first, remember? And now Batman's a fugitive, the whole Justice Society's retired, and our man's dead.
The very skepticism of the heroes plays into the story and into the era perfectly. The story is about reclaiming one's freedom, to convince the government to work with the heroes, not oust them as vigilantes, to let them operate as free citizens of a country that founded itself on liberty and freedom. It's a politically charged story that very much takes inspiration from the look and feel of those Golden Age comics. But don't be fooled, as its message most certainly remains relevant today.
A America was founded on the notion that a person should be free to follow his or her destiny. But we can't do that if we're living in fear of our own government. We need to reclaim this country for free men and women everywhere.
Whilst the new frontier is grand in scale, whilst also remaining deeply personal, no other feature takes the grand storytelling and rides with it as much as Green Lantern First Flight. First Flight manages to tell the gripping and very much layered origin of Hal Jordan. As Hal is introduced to the Corps, so are we. Discovering information throughout the story as Hal does, we see that there is more to the death of Abin Sur than meets the eye. Reveals and escalation drive the story forward, it crescendoing in betrayals and a battle between will and fear, good versus evil. First Flight acts as an incredibly well-structured origin story, one with a solid voice cast, backed up by some really amazing dialogue and a really great iteration of Sinestro.
The only way to operate out here is by fear. They hit, I hit harder. They attack, I annihilate. I am the one constant, unassailable force against their chaos, and you made them forget that!
I swear, he is one of the best characters I've ever seen written for in a DC animated movie. His motives are so damn clear. He's justified to a degree. He honestly steals half the movie, and that really just shows how amazing Hal Jordan is that he's managed to challenge that. There's an incredible attention to detail here, and you can't forget the visceral action sequences. It earns its place on this list because it best demonstrates the scale in which DC commonly operates. This feature is more akin to something like Star Wars, planet hopping, intergalactic intrigue, and corruption. It's incredibly large in terms of scope and scale, and to me other features like Justice League Dark or Superman Unbound, features with such potential, just miss out on those incredible heights.
Sinestro?
I'm thinking.
What's there to think about?
Plan B.
Sinestro.
Yes.
Speaking of scope and scale, that often will attract an action sequence. Large and epic in traditional DC fashion, the DC films have offered a plethora of amazing action sequences, like the detailed hand-to-hand combat in Batman vs. Robin, or the Big Blue Boy Scout facing the Titan in Doomsday, and now recently, the death of Superman. To me, great action involves the surroundings, the buildings, cars, and bridges. It involves more than the characters just hitting each other. That said, this is why number 7 on our list is Superman Batman Apocalypse.
Darkseid has kidnapped my cousin, Kara.
You need me, so get over it.
You dare?
I'm over it. What about you two?
Gorgeously animated and perfectly articulated, the plot is light and simplistic here, but it serves some of the best action I've seen DC put out. Wonder Woman and Big Barda facing the female Furies, managing to use her lasso in creative ways, all the way to Superman and Supergirl having an incredible showdown with Darkseid, managing to carve up the farm and each other. Superman is charred, Supergirl is broken, and Darkseid looks like someone struck cement with a hammer. To be fair, he sort of looks like that all the time. The movie perfectly encapsulates the dynamic between the two icons, and you can see Batman hold his own here, standing with gods, not only feeling on par with them, but being able to challenge them as well. Arguing with friends, facing a barrage of doomsdays, or standing toe to toe with Darkseid.
You dare? You dare?
Almost as exciting as the idea of comics themselves is the idea of what if. What if things were different? Whether it be a matter of perspective, like in Gotham Knight, or a different reality, like in Gods and Monsters. The Elseworlds story allows for numerous, almost endless amounts of possibilities. What if events had changed, altered, to reflect a similar yet different history? For this reason, Flashpoint Paradox takes the cake.
You broke the time barrier, Flash. Ripples of distortion radiated out through that point of impact, shifting everything just a tiny bit, but enough.
Flashpoint's interpersonal story mixed with the fantastic exploitation of a darker reality makes it well deserved to be number 6. It underperforms when they rely on shock value, that feeling of, oh, I know that character. Oh wait, yep, great, they're dead. Other than that, Flashpoint delivers on one hell of a personal tale. One that actually intertwines Flash's powers, his past, and his story with the cause for the Elseworld event. A race against reality, against his own past. It's bleak and grim, but heroic and grand, and it's everything you could want from a story like this.
To my share of chaos I make my claim, and Etrigan
is my name.
Oh, great. It rhymes.
Next up we have Tone, the movie with the perfect blendings of tone. When movies mix large sci-fi ideas with interpersonal dramas, what it results in is a range of possibilities, clashing personalities like in Assault on Arkham, or emotions and stakes in Superman vs. the Elite. Here we're looking for the movie that best demonstrates a balance of tones, and to me this best fits Justice League Doom.
The Justice League is under attack.
By whom?
By me! Welcome to the Legion of Doom.
A balancing act, Justice League Doom sees the story of Vandal Savage, an immortal who recruits our hero's enemies to fight the League. The movie has a great deal of verisimilitude, to say that it's consistent to its logic. It doesn't have many, if any, tonal inconsistencies. The whole way through the movie is suspenseful and exciting, and it escalates at a pace akin to the characters and what is revealed to them.
No way Star Sapphire came up with this on her own.
I did this to you. To all of you.
It's the perfect example to me that a Justice League movie can work. It can balance the fun, playful tone of The Flash and a heist, mixed with the very real stakes it unravels.
It's a trap.
Most probably, but you can't take that chance. Careful. It's bolted through your wrist. Once you start running, if you decelerate,
it explodes.
It manages to balance a character as hopeful as Superman and as bleak as Batman on screen, and have the drama feel real and earned.
If the League ever did go over to the wrong side, I want there to be somebody I can trust to keep the planet safe.
The movie holds a strong emotional weight throughout, and that escalates into the resurgence of a united League that faces Vandal and the Legion at the end. As important as tone is in a film, so is its text, more specifically subtext. Subtext is characterized by the underpinning theme of a film. To ask, what does it really mean? Subtext inherently needs to serve the text. You can't just have random symbolism and conflate that to being deep. Subtext needs to provide commentary. It's why a movie like The Dark Knight works. It's inherently trying to tell you something. That's also why Man of Steel doesn't work. It's metaphors and symbolism that never get explored, nor relates to or expands on the text itself. To me, no other animated feature does this better than Crisis on Two Earths.
That's the secret of the universe, you know. Billions of people making billions of choices, creating infinite Earths.
The movie sees our Justice League travel to a parallel Earth in which the heroes are now villains and the villains are now heroes. Assisted by a good Lex Luthor, they make an effort to stop the crime syndicate, an evil Justice League. Crisis is a story that questions not only the meaning, but the value of life. The chaos and disorder that comes with that. Is fate destined? Does life have meaning if there are infinite Earths with infinite possibilities? These are the elements at play here, and it gets tied together throughout said text.
Man is a cancer, and I've chosen to cut out the disease.
You're talking about killing
everyone who ever lived, who ever will live.
At the climax of the film, Batman and his counter-Earth opposite, Owlman, sit at the beginning of it all, Earth Prime. Here they break the rules typically associated with subtext. Subtext is typically more powerful when it isn't addressed. Here it is. In the climax of the film, it becomes the focal point, the thesis of their battle, ending in an answer of perspective that defines both characters. The signifier, Owlman, the catalyst for conveying the question, and Batman, the signified, answering its meaning.
There is a difference between you and me. We both looked into the abyss. But when it looked back at us, you blinked.
In a way, some DC animated movies were giving a helping hand by adapting fantastic stories in and of themselves. Stories that are screaming out for an adaptation, like the next DC animated movie, Batman Hush, set to come out soon. However, no other story best fits this than that in the case of AllStar Superman, a commentary on the purpose and the power of being a hero. AllStar Superman sees the big blue Boy Scout in his final days. In those final days, he is the strongest yet. The story questions what is it to be that powerful, to have the ability to change the world.
If it wasn't for you, I could have saved the world.
If it had mattered to you, Luthor, you could have saved the world years ago.
You're right.
The story hones in on Kal-El, creating a deeply personal story. In the hands of lesser writers, Superman can be impossible to write for. The power, the invincible protagonist. But with someone like Grant Morrison, that invincibility is a playground.
Next to Superman, even Lex Luthor's greatness is overshadowed.
I'm trying to educate you.
We all fall short of his sickening, inhuman perfection.
The emotional conflict, the idea that a man can be all-powerful and all good. It's all here and it's translated fantastically to screen.
What would you do if you had his powers?
Help people?
You probably would.
Yes, some aspects of the comic were taken out, the hyperkinetic and grandiose sci-fi ideas, but to me it only streamlines the film more. The comic tends to dart around, whilst the movie has more of a cohesive feel. It's straightforward instead of zigzagging towards its heroic end. The final three on this list really just blow the rest of the list to pieces. AllStar Superman works first as a film. We get into the heads and understand both the protagonist and antagonist. It provides the moral questions that make a character like Superman interesting, and it above all else is an entertaining movie. Speaking of entertaining, typically, to me, entertaining stories often cross over with being deeply personal. And while some movies have missed the mark, like the dynamic between our titular heroes in The Judas Contract, or Damian's conflict with Deathstroke in Son of Batman, it's number 2 on the list that embodies a personal story done right. Batman Year One.
Like a raw, angry nerve. This isn't about healing. I'm not looking for closure.
Year One has been the inspiration and groundwork for arguably the most beloved incarnation of Batman, with the widely accepted Nolan trilogy. In Year One, we chronicle the origin of the Batman paralleled with Jim Gordon's arrival in Gotham. The story is a critique on the time it was made. In a time of constantly escalating stories with bigger ideas and bigger pouches, it was Year One that took it grounded, refined and simplified the approach to Batman and his origin. In such case is this film. What it results in is a very personal and intimate story that is able to get into the heads of both Bruce and Jim, their motivations, their morals, and never have the characters been so well defined and fleshed out, and here we're delivered an excellent film that fires on all cylinders. Whilst others on the list have been great for a particular reason, its scale, its tone, its use of subtext, here we now look at the best of the best. The best movie. The animated feature that transcends being a comic book adaptation and stands on its own as a movie. Wonder Woman is great, its dialogue feels human and its script only helps that, not only being an inspiration for the live action movie, beat for beat, mind you, but also delivering a nice commentary on gender, how women and men need to understand each other.
I bet you would have acted differently if I were a man.
Oh, playing the sex card again, are you? You know what? I've had just about enough of listening to you go on about how terrible men are.
How dare you?
No, I'm not done. You met your first man, what, like 15 minutes ago? And you think you have us all figured out? Well, I'm sorry. But not everything a man does is to further some misogynistic agenda. We don't hold doors open or pull out chairs for women because we're trying to keep you down. And I didn't save you because I thought you were some damsel in distress. I saved you because I care about you, Diana.
But to me, out of all the DC animated movies, nowhere had DC soared higher than the release of Under the Red Hood. Heck, where do I start? The animation is on a whole nother level. The fight sequences use momentum and pace to surprise us. It's fluid, carrying into every move. Talents are perfect. They changed who I heard when I read a Batman comic. Jensen Ackles is Red Hood, Jason Isaacs, Neil Patrick Harris, Bruce Greenwood. These are the voices I hear when I hear these characters. Not a single actor phones it in. These are performances backed by a layered script that sees characters go through guilt and anger, a conflict of vengeance and justice.
In a way, Batman, this was the site of your first great failure. Maybe your greatest, but certainly not your last, right?
It's a story that deconstructs Bruce Wayne, a story that recaps his greatest failures as we take a trip down memory lane with his foes and allies along for the ride. It sees one of the most sadistic and nihilistic incarnations of the Joker combat Batman and the Red Hood in a deeply personal tale. Their bout becomes a battle of values. Batman who seeks to uphold conventional morality, Jason who seeks to define his own, and the Joker who seeks to abandon it.
Yes, you can't stop crime. That's what you never understood. I'm controlling it.
Under the Red Hood is a tragic story of a man that wanted to save a boy. He tutored that boy to become a weapon, and when that weapon realized the fight never stopped, and when that boy snapped, he became the thing that they fought all so dear. When Jason crossed that line, he became the bad guy that Batman himself resists becoming every day. This movie addresses that line.
A day doesn't go by when I don't think about subjecting him to every horrendous torture he's dealt out to others, and then end him. But if I do that, if I allow myself to go down into that place, I'll never come back.
It's a movie that is above all entertaining, but also acts as a deconstruction on Batman's one rule. It pushes how far the no killing rule can go before Batman crosses that line, but he never does. To me, great art should make you think and feel, and this movie does that in spades. You feel for the characters and you think about what you would do. Is Batman morally right? Is it okay to kill the Joker in service of the greater good? Do you become the thing you swore to face if you give in to that?
Well, you won't have a choice. I won't. This is what it's all been about. This. You and me and him. Now is the time you decide. If you won't kill this psychotic piece of filth, I will. If you want to stop me, you're gonna have to kill me.
I love these kinds of movies. They make you think and feel, and to me only a few other animated movies have come close to this. Its pace, the dynamic between the characters and the amazing voice cast, the fluid animation, the layered story, the tone, and the moral implications of telling such a story. It's everything you could want in a Batman story. Heck, a movie in general, and for that reason I believe it deserves to be number one on the list.
Come on, old man. We've got bad guys who need chasing. This is the best day of my life.